Hi there, you guys. Welcome back to my countdown of my top 20 favorite films of all times. Let's get right into number 2. Number 2, The Fountain. Again, continuing my theme of including something from some of my favorite directors and favorite genres of film. This one is my favorite from Darren Aronofsky. He is an absolutely amazing filmmaker. I've loved a vast majority of the movies he's made. I love Requiem for a Dream. I love Black Swan. I like The Wrestler. But The Fountain, in particular, is probably the one that has had the largest impact on me. This movie in particular has meant a lot to me, just in the way that I experience this movie now. It mainly deals with a lot of my own personal fears and a lot of the things that I do think about when it comes to my life and the idea of death and losing a loved one, because that is generally the main concept of the movie, is beyond the time travel, the sci-fi, the historical aspect to it. It is first and foremost a movie about accepting death and the death of not only yourself but of a loved one, and the acknowledgement that at some point every person is going to die. This is a fear I've had for a long time, is the fear of death, mainly because we don't know what happens when we die. I know as an atheist, people assume that I just think, nothing happens when we die. We decompose, we go into the ground, and that's it. We are no longer, our minds no longer exist, and the concept of us no longer exists. But we realistically don't know what happens after we die. Physically, yes, we know what happens. Our body decomposes, but mentally, if there is anything that happens when we die, I don't know. No one does. And anyone who asserts that they do is lying to you, because no one for sure knows what happens when we die. It's a very big question mark in pretty much every single person's life, is what happens when we die. And this movie deals with a lot of those fears, especially when you're dealing with the loss of a loved one and someone that you care about a tremendous amount. The things you'll go to, the things that you'll do to prevent that person from leaving you, and how it not only affects you, but how it also affects them. Every time I see this movie now, I almost always end up crying. And I'm not even being facetious, I'm not joking. I legitimately cry. It's one of the movies that almost every time I watch it, I get emotional, because it makes me think about if I was to lose my mother or my sister or my dad, anyone I consider really close to me, especially my family members. And I'm sure if I had an important person in my life, like a significant other, I would deeply care about if they were to die as well. And when I think about that, it always makes me emotional, because I've been so appreciative of the family that I have and the people that I have in my life. And I know that I wouldn't be the person I am now without them. It's a hard concept to grasp, thinking that at some point they are no longer going to be here. They are no longer going to be in my life. Or I may not be in their life. It works the other way around, the idea that I could die, any day now. It really does emphasize this concept of thinking about your own mortality and thinking about the mortality of us as humans, in the very broad sense. But it does a great job in the movie itself of narrowing it down and making you focus on a personal level about the concept. So the movie itself is a bit tricky to interpret if you don't. If you've never seen it before, I don't really want to give too much of it away. There's not really much I can say in terms of spoilers. Usually the big spoilers in movies is, oh, it's someone died or something, but it's like, that is the whole concept of the movie, so it's like, I can't really, that's the issue that they're talking about. But the movie basically takes place in 3 different time periods, 2 of which are actually happening, and have actually happened, and one of them is a fictionalization. They're basically all with the same characters, the same people. So we have one that takes place in like conquistador era Spain, and then in the New World in Mexico, and then you have one that takes place roughly in our time period somewhere. I think it's like supposed to be like 2020 or something like that. It's something within our current era, and then the third one takes place hundreds of years in the future. And the storyline that we're following that is present, that is the present of the movie itself, is the one that takes place in the future. Hugh Jackman is basically traveling to this nebula that he hopes will be able to resurrect his wife Izzy, who has passed away a long time ago, and believes that she has been reincarnated into this tree, and he's basically traveling in this big space bubble. And of course, the cinematography and the photography in general that they used in those scenes, because they did macro photography of different chemicals in a petri dish, and they use that as the backgrounds for space, and it's absolutely gorgeous to look at and gorgeous to watch. It's beautifully shot. And so the rest of the movie basically takes place in flashbacks to hundreds of years ago, to our era. And the tree is basically to represent his wife, who he believes he can bring back to life. And then by the end of the movie, he realizes, you know, he has to die. He has to become the first father, and that relates back to our era, where he is a scientist. He's a doctor basically who's trying to discover a cure for brain tumors, because that's what his wife Izzy is suffering from, and that's what ultimately kills her. And so he is going through these struggles, and he's going through these very physical boundaries to try and overcome. He has these very clear objectives that he has to get over in each of these sections. And then the third one takes place in Conquistador era Spain, and it's a book that Izzy wrote that takes place in that era, and talks about the creation of man, the first father. And if anything, one of the things I do kind of like about this movie, and that I do take away from a lot, is that life is not something that necessarily comes from nothing. Life gives birth to other life. I don't really want to go into too much more. I mean, I've pretty much given away a good chunk of the plot line already, but I do highly recommend this movie to anybody who either wants to watch a movie that may make them cry, who wants to watch a movie that may make them have a bit more of an expansion in terms of philosophy and the reason of being and the reason of death and the acceptance of death. And of course, anybody who just generally likes either Darren Aronofsky movies, or who likes Hugh Jackman, or who likes Rachel Weisz. You know, this movie is incredibly well acted, incredibly well shot, has an amazingly beautiful concept attached to it, as well the music. I cannot emphasize enough how beautiful the soundtrack is for this movie. Every time I hear the ending credit music, I immediately feel like I'm going to tear up and start crying. Like, it just always gets me. It always makes me feel emotional. So if anything, you can probably just go on YouTube and find videos where they have the soundtrack, because the soundtrack is absolutely beautiful to listen to just on its own. So that's my number 2. Thank you guys so much for watching. Come back tomorrow to find out what my number 1 favorite film of all time is. We finally reached the end of this list, and I can finally be done with this list. I didn't think it was going to be this difficult, but it took much longer than I thought it would. I'm so sorry again that it took me so long, but next one I promise will be out tomorrow. It will be done. I'd like to thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you later.